Good morning, welcome back. This is Daybreak and thank you for staying with us here on the broadcast. The hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdicaded. Straight to the topic at hand, which is on the politics of shares in the country. The president and his deputy in back and forth over the shareholding question, as highlighted on the front page of the Daily Nation. The deputy president said that those who joined us late should not expect much at the expense of Kenya Kwanza loyalists. Will continue giving good jobs in terms of appointments in government to those who stood with us from the beginning. He was in Meru County on Saturday, and yesterday he was in Nandi County, where he further defended his statement. The head of state, who was in Nyanza region and is still there, said it is primitive and backward for anybody to imagine that any region of Kenya cannot get development on account of how they voted for. That is not correct, he said. With me in the studio are members of the bicameral parliament, starting off with the member of parliament on my immediate right, Robert Mbui, Kadhiani lawmaker. Good morning.
Good morning, Ayub.
Thank you for your time. Elizabeth Kailemia is the woman MP representing Meru constituency. Thank you for your time, Mheshimiwa.
Thank you.
Asante sana. And the member of parliament, Lugari constituency, Honorable Nabi Nabwera, is also with us in studio. Your time is all appreciated. Shortly, we'll be joined by the Githunguri MP, Gathoni wa Mushomba, here on the broadcast. And let's begin on the note of what the papers have highlighted on their front pages. And while politicians have been away from the capital, Nairobi, and the environs of the bicameral parliament, they were spending time with what they love best, that's their politics. Here is what the Deputy President said in Meru County on Saturday when he attended a funeral service in Tigania East on the question of shareholding and why he will woo the region behind President William Ruto in under 4 years' time to get the remaining 13% for the region to get 60% as a shareholder in the government of Kenya Kwanza. Here's what he said on Saturday.
I want this region to deliver a decisive vote for President William Ruto in 2027 and to make sure that we increase our shareholding in his government from 47% to almost 60%. Many people are uncomfortable about our shareholding. Ni kidogo is only 47. 27 tutaiongeza itakuwa mingi zaidi.
And this is what the president said, who spoke in Kisumu County during his first day visit of Nyanza region on Friday last week on the same.
It is primitive and backwards for anybody to imagine that any region of Kenya cannot get development on account of how they voted. That is not right. That is not correct. And I want to assure the people of Kenya that we are going to move together as one nation.
I begin with the Honorable Elizabeth Kailemia. You are in Tigania East?
Unfortunately, no.
No, okay. But the Deputy President was in Meru County. I mean, is the language of the political class in regard to what he said and what politicians often say healthy in the growth of this country on the political front, on the social front, and on the economic front?
Well, I think our Deputy President is sometimes being misquoted. When he said about shareholdings, he meant in terms of votes. When he says he's going to increase them from 47 to 60, it is true, Meru, we gave him UDA a lot of votes. However, it wasn't as much as we would have wished to. So he is actually trying to gather up more votes for probably 2027. I think that is the shareholdings he's talking about. But not necessarily about development. It's not to say that just because Meru County gave 47%, that they will have more developments done as opposed to people who did not. I don't think that's what he meant.
Okay. But this is what he said in the transcript, that is word for word of what he said. And to quote him, he said, those who joined us late should not expect much at the expense of the Kenya Kwanza loyalists. We'll continue giving good jobs to those who stood with us from the beginning. It seems that there are some Kenyans who, according to the Deputy President, it's a privilege to get government jobs or services and not a right as such because of how they exercised their democratic right.
For me, it's just naturally that if you have a loyalist, you don't go look out for your enemy to give him a job. Well, there are people who stood up with you through thick and thin. I think he's a truthful man. So he's just picking out what everybody actually does. Yeah, if anybody else had taken the government, that's what they would do. Even my friends at Simeo, they would do the same.
In your view, then, is it about merit, competency, or those who supported your campaigns, for example?
No, it's
what would you award?
I would award competency. And there's competence in both sides, whichever side, those who supported and those who did not support. But then given the two who have the same qualification, you tend to, bend on the person who stood with you throughout. It's not to say that just because you're UDA or Kenya Kwanza, they give you a job and you're not competent enough to be able to do that job.
Okay, we will get deeper into the aspects of what that means and the constitution which establishes Kenya as a sovereign state under which the people of Kenya hold the sovereign power and not a shareholding entity. I come to you, Honorable Nabina Bwera. What do you make of this statement by the Deputy President and the President who himself in Kisumu County said that is backwardness and primitive for anybody to imagine and think that any region of Kenya cannot get development on account of how it voted for. That is incorrect. He said we are all equal.
Ayub, I would really have also wished that we played the bite of the Deputy President yesterday in Nandi. Then you will understand the complexity or the simplicity of this matter. One thing I want to tell the nation, the President and his deputy are treating the country to a circus. They are actually all speaking the same thing, but playing politics with it. If you were to listen to Deputy President yesterday in Nandi, he repeated exactly what he said in Meru, but even went further and said, but please note that even if it appears that we are speaking at cross purpose with the President, we are on the same page. It is only meant for politics. He was very categorical yesterday, that even though the President is trying to look like he's rubbishing what he's saying, they are talking the same thing. This is what it is. The Kenya Kwanza government has broken the law. The spirit of the Constitution of Kenya does not anticipate a country made of shares. If you look at the sovereignty of the people and you look at the juxtaposition of the Constitution, then you need to go to Article 10, the values, the national values. And Article 10, I'll read for you, 2 says, the national values and principles of governance include patriotism, national unity, sharing and devolution of power, the rule of law, democracy and participation of the people. B of that says human dignity, equity, social justice. Please underline the word social justice. Inclusiveness. Please underline the word inclusiveness. Equality. Please underline the word equality. Human rights. Non-discrimination. In fact, if we were a serious society, we should be calling the Deputy President to order for discriminating against people. That's what he's actually saying. All I'm trying to say is that the Constitution does not anticipate a situation where, because of voting pattern, you discriminate against the people. But this is what has happened. By the way, I like him. He's a very truthful. I agree with her. Kashagwa is a very truthful man because he brings what they have agreed in the boardroom to the fore of politics. If you look at the Constitution of the executive, the CSS and PSS is true. What he's saying. They discriminated against other community, gave 2 communities the the community from the Rift Valley, the Kalenjin and the Kikuyu, over 60% of the cabinet. CSS, the same. If you look at the sagas, it is the same. Look at energy, a Minister of Energy. All the 6 parastatals, the CEOs are from one community. From one community. And the chairman from the opposite community. So they share. If the CEO is this community, the chairman will be from this community. Is it as you, okay, hang on, you proceed. Is it as you say, the coming from the same community, or in the process there was the award of those positions based on merit and their delivery based on competence? How would you certainly fix it? How would you pin it, Honorable Nabin Abwera, on their ethnic belonging? Would we not be unfair to them for holding positions because they are from those communities? The first thing you need to do is to comply with the Constitution. Are you trying to tell me, by your question, that there would be no Kamba, no Turkana, no Luya, no Luo, no Masai qualified to be appointed a CEO in a parastatal in the Ministry of Energy? That's not true. In fact, if we were to use a rational model, the more prevalence the more educated you are, the more prevalent you will be in application. It's a common thing. Now, let me talk to you as a HR person, that if you were to send the applications, you will look at the genre of distribution in terms of qualification, and you will find it, if they were to publish, you will be in shock. That the ones in places where you had so many people from a particular community who had qualified, they were not even shortlisted for that job. Okay. Would you want to tell me, for example, it was presented in Parliament the other day, if you looked at KRA recruitment, you would cry for this country. Totally cry. One constituency has 40, when one, like mine, which is one of the biggest constituencies in the country, it had 1.
Okay. Okay, we'll talk more about that. And the CS was in Parliament when the members of Parliament had queried him on the same, and he highlighted that the process was done based on fairness. I mean, that was his argument, according to Professor Njuguna Ndungu. Though representation should be based on the mosaic of the Kenyan communities, and therefore, as you have mentioned, what that article calls for, which is the representation of the Kenyan communities. Honorable Robert Mbui, talk to me about what appears to be the blurring line between the president and the deputy president, who are no longer hanging on to the same positions, because the head of state considers Kenya as an entity or a country where we are all equal before the law and that no one should be discriminated. But his deputy, on the other hand, says it's a shareholding entity and that he has no apologies to make over the same. He said the same in Nandi County yesterday.
Yeah, thank you, Ayub. Ayub, I want to point you to the fact that Kenya Kwanza have been in office for more than 1 year. And the very first thing that the deputy president said immediately after they were sworn in is that Kenya is a company of shareholding, and that people will expect development, will expect jobs, and will expect to benefit based on their shareholding within that company. How can you tell me that 12 months later is when the president has realized that his deputy was wrong and that now he can castigate him? And look at where the president spoke those words, when he went to an area called Luo Nyanza. And I'll tell you this, Ayub, that even you've listened to my colleague, the member for Meru, my good friend, she said enemies when she talked about political differences. She used the word enemy in this show. That means that is how the Kenya Kwanza administration perceives as mere followers, as enemies. And look, if you go back to the history of Kenya Kwanza leaders, they are not exactly very well known for honesty. And I'll say this, that you heard the things they told us during the campaign trail, the bottom-up model, when they talked about how they'll uplift the Mamamboga, the Boda Boda, and all those are the regions and the people that are complaining and crying out because taxes have been pushed up, people cannot put food on the table. And now, the president goes to Nyanza and says that every part of Kenya must be given its rightful share. And his deputy at the same time goes to another region and says, look, we are speaking from the same side. But we are fooling those people that, in fact, in essence, they consider to be enemies. So I want to say that I think when the deputy president said, I am a truthful man, on that particular one, he is truthful. That they have agreed with the president that they will only reward those people that are on their side. And the rest of us will be left to fend for ourselves. And that's a real position because, like my colleague has said, looking at the positions, the way work has been shared out, or jobs have been given out, development agenda has been worked out. Basically, the rest of us have been left to our own designs. And I want to say that it's unfortunate that when you observe the deputy president's continuous attack on the rest of us, he only seems to believe that the region that deserves the most in this government is Central Kenya. And that's why he keeps saying we are 47%, we are almost 48%. And I keep wondering, is this fight also about him and the president? Because when he keeps saying 47%, what is he telling the president? That he probably gave the biggest share to the Kenya Kwanza administration and that his people deserve more. And that's why every time he speaks, he talks about uniting Mount Kenya. Deputy President must know his responsibility is to unite Kenyans, unite Kambas, unite people from the coast, unite people from Northeastern, the people from Nyanza. All Kenyans must be brought together. Okay. So he needs to tame his tongue and stop this divisive talk, which I know is supported by his boss. And
to speak on the same, Honorable Robert Mbui, I mean, there has been a culture, you agree with me, Honorable Nabi, Honorable Elizabeth, and Honorable Robert Mbui, of politicians feeding from the same trough when it comes to service delivery for the Kenyan people. I mean, that's why we are underdeveloped. It's because of failure on the political class's end, because Kenyans have been consistent in the pattern of paying their fair share of taxes. Talk to me then, if the opposition, that's if the opposition would win the elections in August last year, because there's a culture of incompetence, patronage, and corruption in successive governments since Kenya gained independence. What would be different? What would you do different? Because trust is low in politicians in this country. How would you have administered Kenya otherwise?
Let me tell you, Ayub, the honest truth is this. I think we are different in terms of honesty. There are people that every time they open their mouths, they will lie. And they will lie blatantly. They will lie because they want to get votes. If you look at the promises that two sides make, you can always tell the side that promises heaven on earth, those ones are likely cheating us. Because that is what I can see from the campaign manifesto and the things that were said. But the thing is this. In 2010, we promulgated the new constitution that my colleague has ably read, Article 10. And it's very clear about how the country should be governed. In fact, that is values and principles of good governance, which is supposed to be espoused by anyone holding any public office. So when people take over office, if Azimio takes over office, we are bound by the same constitution. And if we were to reward our cronies against the greater good of the country, we would also be on the wrong. So I want to say that two wrongs can make a right. It has been practiced from from actually independence days. Okay. At independence, I think there was fairness. But towards the KANU era, when KANU was picking up, that is when this issue of cronyism and corruption and leaders trying to only benefit their region started happening. And that's why Kenya is where we are. The Constitution came in to try and correct those mistakes. Unfortunately, this is the third election after the Constitution, right. And we are still going through the same problems. I think Kenyans, and particularly, Ayub, my opinion, Parliament needs to step up.
Okay, and you are a parliamentarian, then there are crucial assignments that have come before Parliament since 2013, when we had the first elections under the current constitutional dispensation. And largely on the part of many Kenyans, they hold you not in high esteem, Honorable Nabina Bwera, Honorable Elizabeth, and Honorable Mbui, yes. Simply because of your conduct, one, simply because of how you have done your businesses when it comes to, for example, crucial issues. We had the sugar report in 2018, which was debated in an acrimonious manner. No substantial outcome to that effect. The Haiti matter we'll be discussing here is coming before Parliament. There are no substantive questions to the executive as to why we need police officers in Haiti, for example. 12,000 kilometers, yet you have problems here in Lamu County. I mean, then how, as a parliamentarian, do you take up that responsibility? And is it also an egg on your faces as members of Parliament that you have failed the Kenyan people?
I agree with you 100% that Parliament of Kenya has failed. I am on record and I have said that sometimes we need to ask ourselves what's the purpose and value of this Parliament. And Ayub, The real problem with parliament is that it is captured by the executive. There's supposed to be separation of powers. There's supposed to be the executive, parliament, and then the judiciary. But unfortunately, the executive actually controls parliament. We are like puppets on a string. And I'll tell you a very good example. You've just mentioned Haiti. Just last week, we wanted to do an adjournment motion to discuss Haiti and the reason why Kenyan police should be deployed there. And I remember the Honorable Member Kaluma for, George Opondo Kaluma for Homa Bay Town, he stood up and then we supported his motion. We need only about 20, 30 members. We stood up actually almost the whole house. And the speaker and the chair decided that they were not able to have counted. Yet people stood up and allowed people to start saying, no, we want to retake that vote again, so that they can, find a reason to stop that discussion in the House. Of course, fortunately, members of both sides stood up, and then it was now supposed to be allotted time. The Speaker went ahead, Ayub, and said, now I'll allow you from 6:30. That means only 30 minutes. In essence, Ayub, only one member will contribute, because the mover will have 15 minutes, the seconder will have like 10 minutes, so there will only be 5 minutes, only one member will contribute. In essence, there is the state capture of parliament.
Okay.
Stop us completely from articulating it.
Yes, briefly before you go to break and come back. Yes.
Yes, Ayub.
Yes.
I really agree with the public for feeling that we as parliament has failed them. But this is where the problem started. When we go to parliament, the 13th parliament, the first thing the president and the executive did was to buy out some of Azimio members to join government, so that they would have supermajority in the House to muzzle democracy, to entrench individualistic interests that do not serve the public. For God's sake, we have broken every rule in the book for a democratically elected parliament in terms of debate, in terms of behavior, in terms of structure. You all know, at the point of getting to parliament, the gazettement gazetted Azimio as having majority. If you were to count the power on Azimio, why would you go and raid a coalition to make it a minority? Because you have sinister motive. And Ayub...
But Honorable Nabi, before you proceed, explain it to me how a member of parliament elected by the people will be bought. Is there a buying price? Why, for example?
You need to ask those who are bought.
Okay, let me ask you the question.
Let me just tell you.
I'm just shocked.
Okay, Honorable Elizabeth,
just a minute.
Let's have some order. I'll ask you the question.
You need to ask those who are bought.
Okay, I'll give you the time. Allow me to ask you the question. You said they were bought.
Obviously, they were influenced to join the other end.
All right. I mean,
fact.
I mean, how cheap were they then? You are not bought. I mean, why were they so cheap to be bought by the executive?
I decided to leave the values of the Constitution. Now, if somebody decides in his individual self not to live the values of the Constitution, what do I do? Then I can't police him.
Hang on. Then what crops up here, Honorable Nabi, you'll agree with me, is then that you had members of parliament within the opposition ranks who had no ideology in believing what Azimio stands for.
For sure. It's fact.
Then that's what informed how they were bought, precisely as you're
That's what it is. That's what it is.
So where's the problem then?
It's like infidelity. You get married to a woman or to a man. The woman or man decides to play around. What do you do? At the point of courting, you agreed that you are going to stay in marriage loyal to each other. Now, if one decides to
blame the other.
You can't blame the other one. And the other one would not have read through the mind to know that huyu atanicheza.
Now, okay, Honorable Nabi, still, here comes in the aspect about, we'll get to the break and come back, but briefly, let's finish up on Honorable Elizabeth. I'll give you the time for your contributions as well. There's the question of an ideology and policies that a party and a coalition political party, Azimio, for example, that stood for during the elections. I mean, how cheap are those members of parliament? You, Nabi Nabuera, for example, okay, were not bought. We had seen Azimio members of parliament go to State House in Nairobi. These are not kids, Honorable Nabina Bwera. These are members of parliament with logical intellect who can reason on their own. And therefore, what does it say about generally politicians and leaders in this country? How cheap are you?
Actually, the problem should be taken back to the voter. Whom do you vote for? That's basic. Whom do you vote for? Listen, we all went out there to the public, and that's why we are saying, if we were to leave this constitution, if I reach parliament and feel that the party or the coalition that elected me to parliament does not meet my criteria, I should resign and go back to the people and tell my people, listen guys, I came with this vehicle. This vehicle is a wrong one. It has punctured tires. It has a bad engine. It can't get us where we want to go. Please allow me to get out of this vehicle and board the next vehicle so that we can go to the destination we want to go.
Which all boils down to the question of integrity and positions that ought to be firm for all leaders in this country.
Correct.
We'll continue about that. Honorable Elizabeth, let's pay some bills, come back, I'll come to you straight, and we proceed with this discussion. And also, because it's a debate about Parliament, the Interior CS said Parliament will be the next stop for the deployment of the Kenyan police officials to Haiti following the UN Security Council meeting on Monday last week from New York in the United States of America, which approved the mission in Haiti to be led by Kenya to forestall the gang violence in the capital Port-au-Prince and other parts of Haiti. The hashtag on Twitter is Daybreak, the SMS code, that's X, formerly Twitter. The hashtag on X is Daybreak, the SMS code 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. We continue after the break. Stay tuned.